Hello, my name is Lindsay. I am 32 years old, and I honestly have no idea what I was thinking. I was sitting in the kitchen, casually conversing with my sister Danny about something I definitely shouldn't have said aloud. You know how you vent a little too much and then realize you should have kept your lips shut? Yes, that's me. I don't think I meant for him to hear it, but perhaps I didn't care enough to keep my voice down. I told Danny that if I had to do it over again, I would not date my husband Derek. I said it casually, as if I were discussing a poor haircut rather than the man I committed to spend my life with. I'm not even sure why I said that. Maybe I was bored, or maybe I just needed her pity. Derek wasn't doing anything improper at the time. He was in the next room, most likely scrolling through his phone as he usually does after work. But I said it, and then the stillness struck me. It wasn't Danny's quiet. She's accustomed to my theatrical outbursts. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, as if the air had abruptly shifted. I moved my head slightly to find him standing in the doorway. He said nothing. He didn't yell, didn't ask me to explain, and didn't even appear irritated. He glanced at me for a second, his face blank before walking out of the room. I felt terrible as I heard the front door close behind him. I didn't expect that. To be honest, I expected him to quarrel or get angry. But leaving that was not his style. Derek has always been the calm patient one who balances my, let's call it, energy. I didn't expect him to actually depart, though. I mean, I didn't say I disliked him or that I planned to leave him. It was simply venting, right? Isn't this what people do with their sisters? You say things you don't mean because people understand. They are supposed to. Danny did not know what to say. She merely looked at me with wide-eyed surprise, as if she couldn't believe I'd said it too. But rather than recognizing my mistake, I doubled down. I laughed it off and said, "He'll be fine. He's simply being dramatic." I'm not sure why I said it. Maybe it was because admitting I was wrong would require me to deal with the guilt which I didn't want to do just now. After several hours, he did not return. I phoned him once and texted him after he didn't answer. "You okay? No response?" Fine, I thought. If he chose to pout, it was his decision. I wasn't going to ask him to come back over something so minor. But as the night progressed, I began to experience a strange mix of fury and panic. How dare he leave me sitting there? But where the hell was he? Was he trying to teach me a lesson? I stayed up until midnight, browsing through TikTok and pretending I wasn't waiting for him to come back through the door. He did not. By the time I got to bed, I was more annoyed than anything else. I told myself he'd return when he was ready, and I wasn't going to lose sleep over it. Spoiler, I totally did. The next morning, his side of the bed remained vacant. His toothbrush was still inside the bathroom. His sneaker is still by the door, suggesting he didn't just pack up and leave for good. But I couldn't shake the unpleasant feeling. I messaged him again. "Where are you now? Can we speak? Still nothing." At this time, I began to worry. Not because I felt bad, but because I disliked being ignored. I'm not the type of person that tolerates silent treatment. If there's a problem I need to discuss, work it out and move on. What about Derek? He's more of a let things simmer type of person, which drives me insane. I informed Danny about it, and she suggested I apologize. Apologize for what? For being honest, for expressing my current feelings. I didn't understand why I had to grovel just because he happened to overhear a private conversation. He shouldn't have been eavesdropping, I replied, attempting to justify it to myself rather than her. But even as the words were spoken, they seemed hollow. By the end of the day, I was becoming frustrated. Who does he think he is, stressing me out like this? If he had a problem with what I said, he could have stayed and discussed it with me as an adult. Instead, he ran away, leaving me feeling like the terrible guy. Okay, maybe I'm the bad guy. But it's not like I stated anything untrue. Sometimes I wonder whether I would be happy if we never met. That is not the same as saying I do not love him. Right. But as much as I tried to persuade myself that I was correct, a small part of me began to question if this time I had pushed him too far. Derek has always been the type of guy that lets me take the initiative and goes along with whatever I want, even though I know he doesn't always agree. I suppose I had started to take it for granted. I always expected he would be present no matter what, but for the first time I was unsure. The hours passed with no word from him. I tried calling his mother, but she had not heard from him either. That's when I began to feel quite apprehensive. What if he wasn't simply mad? What if anything had happened to him? But Derek isn't the sort to act recklessly or stupidly. If anything, he is the most predictable guy I know. That is one of the reasons he may be so frustrating at times. By the time it got dark, I was in a spiral. I wasn't sure if I should be angry, worried, or just over it. I wanted to text him again, but I did not want to appear desperate. So I sat there staring at my phone, expecting for it to light up with a message that never arrived. The next day passed and Derek was still gone. I told myself to calm down, but every time I heard a car outside, my heart raced. I kept checking my phone, reloading my texts like an idiot, as if I had missed his response somehow. Nothing. Not one word. At this point, my irritability had taken over. Who does this? Who just departs without telling their wife where they're going? It was juvenile, plain and simple. But then, as I sat there staring at my coffee, a notion struck me. What if he was truly done this time? What if I had finally pushed him to the point of no return? It wasn't an idea I enjoyed having, but the more I tried to dismiss it, the more it stuck. Derek was not like this. He did not do silent treatments or games. If he was gone, there was a cause, and it might be more than I wanted to admit. Danny called about noon to check on me. "Have you heard from him yet?" She inquired, her voice lower than usual, as if she was trying not to scare me. "No," I snapped, and it is stupid. "He's making this a huge issue, not me." "Linz," she said carefully, "you made it seem like a big problem at first." I wanted to hang up with her. Instead, I said, "You should be on my side." But even as I spoke, I felt a pang of remorse. She wasn't completely wrong. Maybe I overreacted, but I had no intention of hurting him. I just didn't expect he would take it so hard. It's not as if I informed him I was leaving or didn't love him. People complain all the time. He was just being overly sensitive. By the time nightfall arrived, I had convinced myself that I needed to quit waiting. If he wasn't going to come back on his own, I'd go get him. I called his mother again, but she still had not heard from him. I also tried some of his pals, but either they were covering for him, or they simply didn't know. When I asked if Derek had contacted them, Mark seemed shocked. "Is everything okay with you two?" he inquired, and I had to resist the desire to snap at him. "Yeah, fine," I said quickly. "Just checking." After that, I drove around for an hour, unsure where to go. Derek wasn't the kind to hang around in bars or sleep on a friend's couch without saying anything. He was stable and predictable. So where the hell was he? When I arrived home, there was still no sign of him. His toothbrush and shoes were like ghosts telling me he should have been there. I stood in the kitchen for what seemed like an eternity, staring at the front door and wishing it to open. But it did not. The place was too quiet, and I despised it. I began browsing through our bank account partially out of curiosity, half out of a need to feel productive. That's when I noticed it. A hotel hub charge from earlier in the day. He was not with his mother, a friend, or God forbid anyone else. He was in a hotel alone. I couldn't decide whether to be relieved or upset. So he was fine. But he was also hiding out at a hotel, ignoring me as if I wasn't worth speaking with. A nerve. I dialed the motel immediately. I'm not sure what I was going to say if he picked up. But it didn't matter because the desk clerk refused to confirm anything. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she added in a phony, pleasant tone, "but I can't give you any information about our guests." I wanted to shout. Instead, I hung up and began composing another text. "I know where you are," I wrote, my fingers trembling. "Could you please quit being childish and come home so we can talk?" I glanced at the message for a few moments before deleting it. Allow him to act like a coward. I wasn't going to beg. Still, the knot in my stomach refused to go away. I despised the feeling that I was out of control and that he had the upper hand. Derek was supposed to be the one who chased me, forgiven me, and let me vent before moving on. That is how it has always worked. So, why isn't it working now? The next morning, I awoke to an empty house. It was beginning to get to me. The quiet and not knowing. I attempted to concentrate on work, but each email felt like a diversion from the main issue. My spouse had left, and I had no idea what to do about it. I kept telling myself it wasn't serious, that he just needed space. But the longer he was gone, the harder it became to believe. By mid-afternoon, I'd had enough. I drove to the motel not caring how desperate I appeared. If he didn't come to me, I would go to him. When I arrived, the cashier gave me the same speech about privacy, and I had to resist the impulse to make a scene. "He's my hubby." I snapped, but she simply smiled that fake customer service smile and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am." Defeated, I returned to my car. As I sat there staring at the steering wheel, I began to feel something I had not allowed myself to feel in years: fear. What if he's not coming back? What if I had pushed him too far this time? And what if deep down I realized it wasn't simply what I'd told Danny? This wasn't the first time I let my mouth get ahead of me, nor was it the first time I prioritized my own feelings over his. Perhaps this time he'd had enough. Still, as much as I hated to admit it, I wasn't prepared to apologize. Not yet. I needed to visit him first to make sure he was okay and to figure out how to make this work in my benefit. Because if there's one thing I've always been good at, it's talking myself out of a situation. And this was simply another mess. Right. I didn't have to wait long to see Derek following my unsuccessful try at the motel. Late that evening, the front door opened, and there he stood. He did not slam the door or throw his keys down as I might have done in his place. He stepped in smoothly, perhaps too calmly, and I couldn't make out his expression. That blank expression on his face bothered me. I was prepared for a battle, or at least a spectacular response. But this was awful. He dropped his suitcase down near the couch and stood there for a bit, looking at me as if he wasn't sure what to say. For a brief moment, I assumed he'd simply walk upstairs without saying anything. Instead, he spoke. "We need to talk," he said, his tone firm and almost chilly. "Yeah, no kidding," I replied, putting my arms across my chest. I was already defensive, even knowing I should have apologized. But I was not going to start there. I could not. It felt like admitting I was wrong would give him some kind of control over me, something I wasn't prepared for. He sat down on the couch and motioned for me to join him. I remained standing, leaning against the kitchen counter, as if I were too preoccupied to care. "Are you going to explain why you ghosted me for 2 days?" I inquired, attempting to seem casual. But my tone came over rougher than I wanted. Derek sighed and rubbed his hands together as if to warm them up. "I wanted space," he explained. "To think. I'm trying to figure out how to even talk to you after what I heard." I rolled my eyes. "Oh, Derek, come on. Are we actually doing this? You had overheard one thing I stated privately to my sister. And now you're acting as if the world had ended." "Lindsay, it wasn't just one thing." His voice rose slightly, but he quickly lowered it. "You stated you'd never date me anymore? That if you could go back, you would not have chosen me." "Perhaps I wouldn't." I shot back before I could control myself. The words hung in the air for a time, and I regretted saying them. But then I doubled down. "Derek, you have changed. We both know this. You aren't the same guy I married. You're—" I hesitated, attempting to choose my words carefully, but my emotions got the best of me. "You've been lazier, okay? You have let yourself go. You don't even try anymore. Could you really blame me for feeling this way?" He glanced at me, and for the first time I could see genuine pain in his eyes. But instead of being enraged, he nodded slowly, as if he was anticipating it. "So that's it," he said quietly. "You believe I'm obese and ugly, so you'd prefer not be with me." I rolled my eyes again, attempting to dismiss the significance of what I had just spoken. "Do not pervert my words. I did not indicate that I did not want to be with you. I replied that if I could go back, I would have made a different decision. That is not the same thing." "That sounds like it to me," he said, his voice steady but firm. "And you know what? Maybe you are right. I've changed. I've grown older. I have gained some weight. I've gotten comfy. But that's what happens when you get married, Lindsay. You settle into life together. You build a life. Or at least, that's what I assumed we were doing." I felt my face flush shame and wrath rising inside me. I raised my voice saying, "Don't make this about me. Do you think I haven't noticed how distant you have been? How come you seldom talk to me anymore, except it's about work money or what we're having for dinner? Derek, you aren't exactly giving me reasons to be pleased about this marriage. So it is my fault now, he inquired, his tone calm yet skeptical. I am the reason you are unhappy. Why don't you respect me enough to keep that chat between you and your sister out of earshot? I threw up my hands, frustrated. You are twisting everything. I'm simply suggesting that if you put forth a little more effort, worked out, and showed interest in me like you used to, I might not feel this way. He stared at me for a long time, and then he did something unexpected. He stood up slowly and looked me straight in the eyes. You know what, Lindsay? I believe this reveals more about you than it does about me. What is that intended to mean? I snapped, feeling a rush of panic. He was not yelling. He wasn't fighting back as I expected. He remained cool, which made me feel even tiny. It means he continued calmly that you don't see what you have. You have someone who has been there for you through all of your rash decisions, habits, and ups and downs, and has never condemned you for any of them. Instead of recognizing that you hunt for ways to bring me down. I opened my lips to answer, but he was not finished. I realize I'm not flawless. I realize I've changed. But so have you, Lindsay. And not in a way that will make the marriage easier. You've transformed into someone who refuses to accept responsibility, who lashes out, instead of having a genuine conversation, and who would rather blame me than look in the mirror. His comments struck me like a slap. But instead of acknowledging he might be correct, I struck out again. So now you're perfect, the saint, who has kept this marriage together while I am the problem. He shook his head and picked up his bag again. No, I am not perfect. But Lindsay, I'm trying to be better. I'm done standing here and letting you make me feel inadequate. If you don't see the value in me anymore, then we should take a step back. I froze. What are you saying? He gestured between us and added, I'm saying I need more than this. And if you aren't willing to work on it, perhaps I shouldn't be here anymore. He did not yell. He did not slam the door as he left. He suddenly walked away, leaving me astonished and more puzzled than before. Over the next 3 weeks, reality struck me hard. Derek did not return even for his mail. Every time I walked into the house, the emptiness grew heavier. Not only was he physically absent, the silence, the loss of his presence stung the most deeply. I began reaching out to him more frequently, attempting to test the waters. The responses I received were courteous, yet distant. I hope you're doing well. I will come by this weekend to get my belongings. That was it. No warmth, no opportunity for discussion. He wasn't harsh, but it was evident he was over being vulnerable with me. The weekend arrived, and I dreaded seeing him. When he went through the door, he appeared different. His shoulders appeared larger and his posture straighter. He'd trimmed his beard, and it looked really good, clean and purposeful. He even smelled different, as if he had started wearing cologne. I hated to say it, but he looked better than I had seen him in years. Hey, I murmured hesitantly, standing near the kitchen counter as he entered. Hey, he said, giving me a little nod and nothing else. He didn't inquire how I was doing or try to make small talk. Instead, he went directly to his bedroom and began packing his belongings into boxes. I followed him, unsure what to say, yet wanting to end the stillness. Derek, could we talk? I inquired, my tone gentler than normal. He did not stop packing. What is this about? I paused. About us. He paused, gazing at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. How about us, Lindsay? You've made it rather apparent how you feel. I didn't mean it that way, I hastily replied, edging closer. I was upset. I was not thinking. He shook his head and returned to packing. No, Lindsay, you were thinking. You just assumed I wouldn't hear it. The lump in my throat swelled. I did not mean to hurt you. But you did, he responded firmly, finally focusing on me. And it's not limited to that one exchange. It is everything. The way you talk to and treat me. It seems like I'm never good enough for you. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced myself to remain calm. I was mistaken. I know I was. But we can solve it. We've gone through worse, right? He gave a faint, bitter laugh. Have we, Lindsay? I don't think we've ever gone through this before. I don't think I've ever felt so mistreated and undesired. And the worst part, I stayed. I kept trying even though you made it apparent you didn't like me. That is on me. I let it get this far. His comments landed like a punch in the gut. I wanted to dispute and tell him he was incorrect, but I could not. Deep down, I knew he wasn't. So, what is that it? Are you giving up on us? My voice cracked and I disliked how desperate I sounded. I'm not giving up, he said, his voice steady. I'm selecting myself for once. I'm done proving my worth to someone who doesn't recognize it. I stared at him, my thoughts whirling. This was not how things were meant to go. He was supposed to forgive me and assure me we'd work things out together. But instead, he stood there calm and determined, as if he had already made his decision. I can change. I replied just above a whisper, I will do better. I will be better. He sighed and set down the package he was holding. Lindsay, I hope you do. Not for me, but for you. But I can't keep waiting for you to figure it out. I've spent years trying to make you happy, yet all I've received in return is criticism and resentment. I deserved better. His remarks stung more than I expected. I felt the tears well up, and for once I didn't try to hide them. I don't want to lose you, I murmured, my voice breaking. Please, Derek, we can fix this. He stared at me for a long time, and for a split second I thought I saw something flicker in his gaze. Pity, perhaps, or sorrow. Then he shook his head. I've already lost too much of myself trying to fix this, he said quietly. I can't do it anymore. He scooped up the box and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. I wanted to chase after him and beg him to remain, but I knew it wouldn't help. He was done, and for the first time I understood I might have lost him for good. Over the next 3 days, I attempted to divert myself. I pushed myself into work, went out with friends, and did whatever I could to escape being alone at home. Regardless of what I did, the emptiness followed me. Derek hadn't just left physically, he'd taken a piece of me with him. A month later, I saw him again. He was in a coffee shop sitting at a table with a woman I did not recognize. She was attractive, not stunning, but she exuded natural, unforced beauty. They were laughing, and he seemed pleased. He looked happier than I had seen him in years. I wanted to march over there, disrupt their little moment, and remind him that I was still his wife. But I did not. I simply stood there watching from a distance, feeling the weight of my own mistakes. It was my fault. I had pushed him away, broken him apart, and now he was moving on without me. When he noticed me, his smile faded for a brief moment, but he did not appear furious or unhappy. He gave me a brief nod of acknowledgement and then returned to his chat. It was as if I was already a memory for him, something he had moved on from. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt the entire weight of my decisions fall upon me. I had spent so much time condemning him and pointing out his inadequacies that I had overlooked how much he was giving me. And now it was too late. For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. For the first time, I recognized that Derek had not failed me. That was me.